Are the Eagles trying to soar their way back to the Super Bowl this year? Let's have a discussion real quick. So, how about those Philly Eagles? In this season breakdown, you will see me talk about head coach Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, the Eagles team as a whole, O-line, D-line, their flaws, some of their strengths, what they can do, what we're expecting to see this season, and if they can be Super Bowl contenders once again. Now, everybody knows to have a great team, you need to have a great head coach. It all starts with the chain of command. And I think that Nick Sirianni is doing a phenomenal job over there in Philly. Everybody knows to have a great team, you got to have a great head coach. It all starts with the coaching, the chain of command. And I think that Nick Sirianni is doing a phenomenal job over there at Philly. He has that player-coach mentality, and it works so well mainly because he's a young guy and he can relate to his players a lot more. He's not one of those old-fashioned traditional coaches. It also brings out the best in a team, and it makes the players excited to want to play for him, to want to be coached by a guy like him. Now we've got to talk about the full Philadelphia Eagles team, about how much they were counted out as a team, but even more so their star quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Now, if you ask me, Jalen is the most disrespected quarterback in the NFL. Everybody kept saying he's not a quarterback. He can't be great at this position. Well, I guess he proved y'all wrong. Not only did Hurts take Philly back to the Super Bowl, but the team as a whole played stellar on both sides of the ball, despite falling to the Kansas City Chiefs in a close score of 38-35 in Super Bowl 57. They ended the season with a 16-4 record, which is still phenomenal, especially being the only team to finish in the top 3 in offense and in defense last season. I think they did tremendously well. And honestly, Mahomes is a phenomenal quarterback. Yes, he deserves that Super Bowl, but for me, I'm always going to root for the underdogs because I am an underdog. And to be honest, I would love to see Philly go back to the Super Bowl and win it all. But first, we got to figure out what the Eagles have in store for us this season. Can they go back to the Super Bowl and be Super Bowl contenders? Here's what we know so far. The Eagles are 5-0 and first in the NFC East. On offense, they have 385 total first downs, 6,614 offensive yards, and 59 touchdowns. On defense, they have a total of 44 sacks, averaging 96 points allowed and 19.2 points allowed per game. Now, a lot of people thought losing both coordinators, Gannon and Steichen, would impact the Eagles since they lost both coordinators at the same time in the offseason. But I think that Brian Johnson, who's had a great relationship with Hurts before he got to the Eagles, and defensive coordinator Sean Desai, who is heavily influenced by Vic Fangio's defensive philosophies, have come in, are doing their jobs well, and filling those shoes. They're meeting those expectations, and you can't help but buy into it. Now, when it comes to Hurts, so far he has 1,262 yards, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and is ranked 12th in the QBR with a 60.6% rating. It's important to know what type of quarterback Jalen Hurts is. He's one of those players who turns his strengths into weaknesses, per his words. I'm sure we all know that he was the clear frontrunner for MVP last year before he was injured and had to miss a few games. He had a phenomenal season, but now Jalen, he's just focused on winning, which any player should be. Between growing mentally through the game with his decisions, his accuracy, and his leadership, Jalen is always looking to get better. Even Nick Sirianni is a fan of Jalen Hurts and said he's probably the most coachable athlete he's ever had the pleasure of being around. When the time comes, Jalen will definitely exceed expectations that he's put in once again, and if you ask me, he will earn that MVP title. Now let's talk about this offense that surrounds Hurts. They are absolutely immaculate, and adding DeAndre Swift to the roster during the offseason was a great decision by the front office. He really does add to the offense by being another great weapon alongside A.J. Brown, who leads the team with 35 receptions, 541 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 15.5 yards per catch. He's definitely one of those guys who have a hard time being stopped. And you know what they say? 1K is always open. You also have Devontae Smith, who teammates believe is on the cusp of being one of the best receivers in the NFL. He has 23 receptions, 290 yards, and 2 touchdowns, averaging 12.6 yards per catch. With these 3 on the offense, along with Dallas Goedert, who has 205 yards, Jalen can definitely have his way in the backfield and in the air. Now let's talk about this O-line. We can't forget about the big dogs who make it all happen. One of the top ranked O-lines led by Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. Jason Kelce is a 6-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro center, and Lane Johnson is a 4-time Pro Bowler offensive tackle who's become one of the most dominating trench players in the league and one of the best overall offensive tackles in the NFL. According to CBS, Johnson and Kelce have both gone over 1,200 pass block snaps since last allowing a sack, which is good for second and third longest active streaks in NFL. Like, wow. This O-line is also a big part of the reason why the Eagles are one of the top teams in QB rushes and can't be stopped. Now let's talk about my favorite part of the ball, defense. Can we sit and just talk about how Philly has a whole team full of Georgia Bulldogs? Aside from Swift being on offense from Georgia, you've got Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, Nicole B. Dean, and Jalen Carter. And they are all a bunch of, you named it, dogs. They all have their unique qualities that they bring to the defense, which makes them so exciting to watch. Now, you can't help but notice people like Jalen Carter on the D-line, who's first among defensive tackles and QB pressures with 25 in just 5 weeks. He's always causing havoc for other O-line teams, which is partially the reason why they've started double teaming him this season. He's definitely on the road to being the best defensive player in the league, and I'm thinking he may even surpass Aaron Donald's career. It's also good to pay attention to Fletcher Cox and how he can play a little bit more freely now, since Jalen Carter is where he is and he doesn't have to play as many snaps anymore. So it works out for the best. You also have Hassan Reddick, who's always been a phenomenal player. He just got his cast off, which allowed him to play a little bit more freely, and that also allowed him to get 2 sacks last week in the game. Now, I'm a DB myself, so you can't forget about guys like Darius Slay and Elias Ricks. Elias is a great physical corner with some good size on him, very athletic, but he's still developing. He'll be fine as long as he keeps developing and wanting to be great. And Slay, who's one of the leaders on the defense and a top 5 cornerback, and to me, still plays like he's in his prime. As a defensive player myself, he's such a playmaker and he's exciting to watch. He definitely does a good job being an impact player on the Eagles defense, even with the help up front, which helps the secondary on the back end. Now that we've talked about all the great stuff about the Eagles, let's really talk about them. The Eagles are heading into Week 6 against the Jets and have a great chance at taking home the win at MetLife Stadium. But I do have some concerns. The secondary. They have some major flaws that definitely need to be worked on if they want to win it all. And those flaws need to be fixed now. There hasn't been a healthy safety starting all season. We've seen a little of Edmonds and Evans, and neither one of them are dominating at the safety position, if you ask me. Now, in their case, I think the best scenario will be bringing in someone who can cover and make plays as well. I know there's been a little bit of talk about bringing in Justin Simmons from the Broncos. I don't know how much they're considering it, but I think he would make a great addition to the secondary, especially the way he plays on defense and his instincts for the game. I would also like them to use Roby just a little bit more. Even though he hasn't been in Philly very long, with Devontae Maddox injured, he is the next best man up for the job at slot corner. He's a veteran, so he understands the game. He's quick and he's good in coverage situations. And that's the type of player that they need at that position going forward. All in all, the Eagles still have time to make those adjustments to the secondary. But it would be easier for them to make those adjustments now in order for them to go back to being Super Bowl contenders. I'm excited to see what they're going to do for the rest of the season. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do against the Jets tomorrow. Make sure you stay tuned and watch the Jets versus the Eagles at MetLife Stadium on Fox at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time.